Falling Stars. On the afternoon of April 12, 1945, Vice President Harry Truman strode through the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., dressed in his usual gray suit and bow tie. Until about a year before, Truman had been a senator from Missouri. Then President Roosevelt surprised the nation by picking Truman to be his running mate in the 1944 election. They won easily, but Truman soon realized that FDR had wanted him to help win votes in the Midwest, not to help run the country. By April 1945, Truman had been vice president for 3 months. Roosevelt had invited him to a total of 2 private talks. At about 5 that afternoon, Truman stepped into the office of the Speaker of the House for a scheduled meeting. The secretary looked up from her desk. "Steve Early wants you to call him right away," she said. Truman picked up the phone and dialed the number for Roosevelt's press secretary. "This is the VP," Truman told Early. "Please come right over." Something in the tone of Early's voice caused the blood to drain from Truman's face. "Jesus Christ and General Jackson," he said as he hung up. Truman jumped in a car and told the driver to take him to the White House. "I thought I was going down there to meet the president," he later said. "I didn't allow myself to think anything else." But he suspected the worst. Roosevelt had not been looking well. His eyes were sunken, Truman remembered. His magnificent smile was missing from his careworn face. He seemed a spent man. Truman hurried into the White House and was taken up to the second floor to an office used by Eleanor Roosevelt, the president's wife. Eleanor stepped forward and put her arm around Truman's shoulder. "Harry," she said, "the president is dead." Truman stood silent for a long moment. He finally managed to ask, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Eleanor smiled sadly at Truman. "Is there anything we can do for you? For you are the one in trouble now." Truman called the members of Roosevelt's cabinet, told them the news, and asked them to come right to the White House. Then he called Harlan Fiske Stone, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He asked Stone to come swear him in as president. After taking the oath of office, Truman met with the cabinet members. He assured them he would continue Roosevelt's policies. "I made it clear, however, that I would be president in my own right," he said later, "and that I would assume full responsibilities for such decisions as had to be made." The meeting lasted just a few minutes. Truman watched everyone get up and silently file out. Everyone except Secretary of War Henry Stimson, who walked around the long table and up to the president. Stimson told me that he wanted me to know about an immense project that was underway, a project looking to the development of a new explosive of almost unbelievable power, recalled Truman. It was the first bit of information that had come to me about the atomic bomb. Just 2 years before, Stimson had decided Truman wasn't important enough to know about the Manhattan Project. Now, if an atomic bomb could be built, it would be Truman's job to decide how to use it. "If you ever pray, pray for me now," Truman told reporters when they surrounded him the following day. "I don't know whether you fellows ever had a load of hay fall on you, but when they told me yesterday what had happened, I felt like the moon, the stars, and all the planets had fallen on me." By April, Hitler's armies were in complete collapse. Allied forces were pouring into Germany from east and west, but the question remained, how close was Hitler to getting an atomic bomb? On April 23rd, a squad of Alsace mission soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Boris Pash, the same man who had grilled Oppenheimer about his loyalty to America, raced ahead of advancing armies into the town of Haigerloch. "As we approached," reported Pash, "pillowcases, sheets, towels, and other white articles attached to flagpoles, broomsticks, and window shutters flew the message of surrender." But Pash wasn't there to take the town. He was there to find Heisenberg's secret lab. The search led to an 80-foot cliff where Pash found a doorway carved into the rock. The steel door was padlocked. Pash's soldiers asked around, found the lab manager, and dragged him to the door. Pash told the man to unlock the lab. The man hesitated. "Shoot the lock off," Pash ordered his soldiers. Gesturing to the manager, he added, "If he gets in the way, shoot him." The manager unlocked the door. The doorway opened on a dark cave. In the floor, dug into the rock, was a hole about 10 feet across, covered by a heavy metal shield. Pash had picked up enough physics to know he was looking at the heart of Germany's atomic research. A German prisoner, reported Pash, confirmed the fact that we had captured the Nazi uranium machine, as the Germans called it, actually an atomic pile. In this cave, Heisenberg had been trying to build an atomic pile similar to the one made by Enrico Fermi on the squash court in Chicago. He'd been trying to create a chain reaction in uranium, the first step on the road to an atomic bomb. But where Fermi had succeeded, Heisenberg had failed. The Germans were more than 2 years behind. German physicist Kurt Diebner, a leader of Hitler's bomb project, later explained why. It was the elimination of German heavy water production in Norway that was the main factor in our failure to achieve a self-sustaining atomic reactor before the war ended. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place at last, said a relieved Leslie Groves. American soldiers found Germany's entire supply of uranium at a nearby farm, freshly plowed under the soil. It was packed into fruit barrels and shipped to the United States. The capture of this material, Groves reported, would seem to remove definitely any possibility of the Germans making any use of an atomic bomb in this war. That race was over, but another was just beginning. Germany did not have the atomic bomb. Now Groves was determined to keep the Soviet Union from getting it. Our principal concern, he explained, was to keep information and atomic scientists from falling into the hands of the Russians. Alsace teams rounded up the top German scientists. Otto Hahn, the man who had discovered fission, was found sitting at a desk in his office, a packed suitcase beside him. "I have been expecting you," he said, in English. A few days later, Boris Pasch tracked down Werner Heisenberg in a mountainside cabin. When the Americans arrived, Heisenberg was sitting on the porch, waiting. He sighed and stood, feeling, he later said, like an utterly exhausted swimmer setting foot on firm land. "He was worth more to us than 10 divisions of Germans," said Groves. "Had he fallen into Russian hands, he would have proven invaluable to them." Over the following few weeks, teams of Soviet soldiers sped through Germany on an Alsace-style mission of their own. They were under orders to grab important papers from German labs and capture top German physicists. The Soviets wanted to know how far the German bomb project had gotten, and they wanted German scientists, willing or not, to help them with their own bomb. As Soviet soldiers ransacked German labs, they realized 2 things. 1, the Germans had not come close to building an atomic bomb. 2, all the scientists were gone.